Giovanni, a famous Italian-American. And if we only put more confidence and trust in our banking system, our hedge funds, our individuals who really we can get behind, we're going to have a great boom in the early part of the 21st century. But that was not to be, and I would have kind of enjoyed giving that speech in '63. Jerry, do you remember who gave the speech that year?
It could have been Harvard.
That's really good. That's who it was. Whatever happened to him? He's probably CEO. So. Yeah, I guarantee you, no matter where he is, he wouldn't show up here tonight. So let's go to my favorite topic now that we've got past that kind of painful past where I think most of you would agree I would have done a pretty good job as valedictorian. So now we'll talk about something that I like a lot and is my favorite topic. It's San Jose and this valley. A very unique place, and a place that, I think in the truest sense, we follow in the footsteps of many others. It was founded, of course, by the Spanish in 1777. Llano de los Robles is what they called it. For those of you who took 2 years of Spanish like I did, that means the plain of the oaks. And kind of as a testimony to Lou Lucas, I always would say that, Llano de los Robles, because it's probably the only 2 words I ever learned how to pronounce properly in his class, because he made me do that. So I used that many times as mayor. When it went from 1777 to a great agricultural society here, and there were great entrepreneurs, every bit as great in their own field as the great Silicon entrepreneurs of the last 50 years, that invented tremendous things that really changed the way agriculture was done. The FMC company, of course, evolved from a very small company here. And you had a society made up of a lot of people who came through Ellis Island: Italians, Irish, Croatians, Portuguese, some French. You had a very diverse society in many ways. And the city didn't change, and the valley didn't change really too awfully much between 1777 and the early part of the 20th century. It went from the Spanish period, of course, with the gold rush, and there were great changes there. But the changes that occurred that I think are most important as we stand here, that in 1926, a group of intrepid Jesuits and a 37-member senior class, of which John and my father was one of them, came down the Alameda from Santa Clara Prep and established this place here, which was the old College of the Pacific. And with all of those great and wonderful buildings like Oscar Hall over there, a variety of others that they borrowed and steal. But it was really quite a campus and quite a group of spectacular buildings. But as they came down here and established this building and this great institution here that we're all a part of, it was really a very hit and miss thing. Bellarmine, of course, didn't have that name, and the name Bellarmine was very controversial. Nobody will be able to pronounce it, nobody will know how to spell it. Who was he? I'll tell you who he was because I read it last night. Obviously, he was a famous cardinal, but he almost got elected pope twice. And usually you don't remember those guys that finish second. But we're remembering him for a lot of good reasons. But just to think, Bellarmine is a name that so much is associated with everything we consider good and interesting and stuff. Bellarmine. In 1926, whether to name it or not, was highly controversial. So that first class had people in it that I think maybe a few more than just Jerry and my brother and I know. Sal Sanfilippo, a great patron of this school in this valley. Jim Jennings, who only died a few years ago, maybe the first or second to last member of that class. They only stayed here for a cup of coffee. They were the first graduating class of Bellarmine. They were here about 3 months. And then almost every one of them, the people I mentioned, went right back up the street to Santa Clara. So they came here very briefly. And our parents, particularly our fathers, were always after us for the way we cut our hair or didn't cut our hair. We found a picture of the football team with my dad on it and stuff. The hairdos in this picture it was like the old Beatle hairdos, except everything cut all the way around here. It was kind of the reverse of a lot of us right now. Just a very strange group of individuals, but extraordinary men in their own right. Jerry O'Brien, whose son went to school over with me, was part of that. a man who, if you're a sports aficionado, you'd remember this name, Marv Owen. You know, Marv, I don't know how many of you know that name, but he was he went to school here, same year as my dad, 1926. Then he went to Santa Clara, and then he played in the 30s with the Detroit Tigers, or as they said then, the Detroit Tigers. Played in a number of World Series and had a great brawl at third base with they were playing St. Louis, the Gas House gang, Ducky Medwick, and I think Leo DeRocher was on that team, and a bunch of other individuals. So Marv Owen was like a combination of Joe Montana and Barry Bonds minus the steroids. You know, he was one of the greatest athletes that ever came out of this area. And he was part of that first class in 1926. So if they hadn't come down here and they hadn't separated at Santa Clara University, and for your homework, please read the Bellarmine book so you will know a little bit more about exactly why they left Santa Clara. It's kind of painful, and you know, they talk about all the ridiculous decisions that were made by the Jesuits and things like that. But I don't want to talk about that because it gets kind of mean-spirited later on. I advise you just to go to the book. But if they hadn't moved down here, this neighborhood here, College Park, would be known primarily as the place where Jack London's hero in The Call of the Wild leaves for the Yukon with his dog. What was his dog's name? Trigger. I didn't know we had St. Francis. His dog's name, of course, was Buck. So the valley grew from that time onward, and Bellarmine was very much an intrinsic part of it. You know, it kind of moves forward quickly from there. You know, 1926, of course, led into the Great Depression. A graduate of Bellarmine by the name of Brooke Hart was kidnapped in one of the most tragic and infamous events in an era where things like that didn't happen. In 1933, was kidnapped and murdered, Hart's department store downtown. Then you had a situation that was well known in San Jose and was well written about by Harry Farrell in his book Swift Justice, about the lynching in St. James Park, where 3,000 citizens took the two individuals and took them out to trees and hung them. That was a Bellarmine graduate, Brooke Hart. It very much traumatized this valley, and there's a lot of reverberations about that whole period in the 30s. A little more positively in the 30s, Santa Clara won 2 Sugar Bowls. You know, you had just tremendous football teams at Santa Clara, and it harkens back kind of to another day and another time when the biggest thing in town was the Santa Clara football game on Sunday afternoon up at Kezar. You know, San Jose grew and the town changed, and kind of the story of San Jose and Santa Clara Valley as it changed and morphed, and the story of Bellarmine really is change and renewal and adaptation and always kind of searching for excellence. 1960 also was a time when Santa Clara hit that great number, 210,000 people. That's how many people lived in San Jose when I went to school here. And kind of a painful but interesting part there. Obviously, we had a Catholic. Would I have hecklers back here? Your 14 minutes is up. Occasionally, I'll go to a movie or something, and somebody will say, you know, did you do that rezoning over there? You put that thing by my house? I said, I don't know. My name's John McHenry. My brother is. It's Mayor. Oh, okay, sorry. That's always worked pretty well. So in the 1960s, you had a lot of change, a lot of transformation, and a very important thing here at Bellarmine, of course, was you had a Catholic elected president. You know, we talk about the great pride that people feel with the election of an African-American president. And, you know, in our lifetime, in our very recent lifetime, the idea of a Catholic being elected president in 1960 was a pretty extraordinary event. You know, the other Catholic who ran for president, Al Smith, the governor of New York, was absolutely crushed by Herbert Hoover, who didn't do quite that well. With a campaign, you know, kind of harkens to some of the horrible campaigns we see and endure now in both the national, state, and unfortunately the local level too, where they basically had a good number of people convinced that if this Catholic was elected president in 1928, that the Catholic Church and the Pope would ruin the country. as if any help was needed, I think, at that period of time. But one of the interesting things that came out of a big